Welcome to this lesson, Introduction to Blockchain Development, presented by Coding Bootcamps. So we're going to talk about smart contracts and do a smart contract lab. Again, here is a reprise of the information about our instructor. And again, some suggested prerequisite classes or additional classes. So what we learned so far, we learned about the smart contracts and the Ethereum virtual machine. We also learned about public blockchains, and we learned how smart contracts work, and we learned about networks. So now we're going to actually talk about developing a smart contract. So Remix is an integrated development environment for Ethereum. It's not the only development tool, but it's quite an impressive development tool. Remix is browser-based. Remix requires no installation, and it does use a simulated Ethereum node called the JavaScript environment. It has a rich text editor. It has the syntax highlighting. It click visual environment, point and click for compiling and deployment, and also visual debugging. So here's the address or the URL for Remix, and it does come with visual debugging, which is very, very good. Comes with our simulated Ethereum node and subdivided Ether, and Remix has three major views: the editor view, the output view, and the explorer view. So if we take a look here, we can see what they call the modules or the icon view, and as you click on these, you will see the details of the module, and then there is the main view and also the terminal view. This is the file view or the file browser view. This is where we edit the contracts. You name them over here, you edit them over here. And then this is the smart contract running in the editor, and you're able to move through these modules such as compile and deployment. So to compile, we go over here to the compile module and click the compile button. And when we're ready to deploy, we move to the deployment module and click the deploy button. And when we're ready to run, we can go in here and actually run the functions, because after we deploy, we will get to actually execute our functions. So this is obviously a contract here in this function set. It accepts a string, and if we click get, so we can see here the output when we click get. For debugging, we can set a breakpoint, and we can click the debug button, start debugging, and we can see these step buttons right here. So you could step over or step into, and you can see your values as you go through. So it's a visual debugger, and it is quite helpful. And we can also see results too. So if we have results output, we can see some results. We can also see outputs written to the Ethereum, the simulated Ethereum log. Here is the contract. So in your learning materials, we should have a contract. And so what we're going to do is paste it in. We're calling it my pay vendor contract. And the name of the file is mypayvendorcontract.sol. It's a Solidity file. And the name of the contract, if you look closely, is right here. So let's do a quick demo of it. Let's bring up our Remix development environment. Here's our Remix development environment. Here's our file module where we loaded the mypayvendor contract. So you see the name of the file and the contract name right here. So mypayvendor contract. And we won't go into too much detail, but what this actually does is it builds a vendor list. We can see here the structure of a vendor. The vendor gets an ID, a name, an Ethereum address. That's not a mailing address, and the amount owed to the vendor. Then we build up our vendors, so we can have 1, 2, 3, 4, as many as we need. And then what we are going to do is then input the address for the vendor, the Ethereum address for the vendor, and the amount that we need to pay, and it will then this function here will pay the vendor. And then we can send the payment. So for right now, don't worry too much about the syntax. So what we're going to do is click the compile button, or compile module, and then the compile button. And then we have a successful compile. Then we're going to click the deploy. So notice here we're in the JavaScript environment. And if we click here, we can see all of these simulated Ethereum accounts with test ether. You can see we've been using some of this. Don't worry if yours looks slightly different. We can see here the contract is my pay vendor contract, and here's the name here again. So we're going to, now that we're in the deploy module, we're going to click the deploy button, and we get a success on that. And we have to expand here next to this twisty here, and we are going to add vendor. So we're going to go in and add a vendor, and we're going to add an ID, a name, and an Ethereum address. So the name here will say, and it's got to be a string in this case, so we'll say Max's store. And we've got to get an address. So we need an address here from our simulated Ethereum node. We can't use our address, so we'll go to this drop down, we'll pick this address, and then we'll click this button here to copy to the, because that is, it's very long. And the amount owed, we'll say we owe Max 20 ETH for right now. And let's add let's add Max now. So we did that. We get a confirmation here that that worked. That's good. Let's close this up. Now we want to issue our Ether. So have to go back here, make sure we issue it under the right address. So we want it to be our address, and let's say it's going to be 200 for right now. Okay, great, that worked. So here's where we have to keep track of our addresses. We have to make sure that my address and my vendor's address, we use them in the appropriate places, very role-based. Let's take a look at our balance. So if we go back and get our latest balance up here, again, copy the address, copy it in here, it should gives us the balance of 200. Great. Okay, that's what we expected. Our issuer, we can see here, here's our issuer address. Our issuer balance is still 200. Our vendor count is 1, but our vendors are 0 based. So we've got to put in vendor, we got to put in the ID of 0. And we can see we're getting back Max's store and his address, and then we owe Max 20. Okay, good. Okay, great. So now what I want to do is I want to make sure I pay Max. I'm going to clear this, and I'm going to click on this send, and we should be able to send 20 Ether over from my balance to Max's balance. Just so, let's get Max's address one more time, and let's put Max's address in here and get the balance. Oh, he is 0 now. Okay, great. And let's put our address back and make sure we have 200. Okay, great. All right. Let's clear the console. And the send button is like the pay button. So this is going to pay everybody. If we find send here, this is going to pay everybody that we owe. So it'll loop through all the vendors that we owe. So, but we only have one vendor, so it shouldn't be too long. So I'll click send, and that ran successfully. So if we come back in here, our address is still here. Let's click balance. Ooh, it went down by 20. Our balance went down by 20. Let's get Max's address. And hopefully Max's went up by 20. Oh, it did. Great. And the issuer balance also went down by 20. We'd expect that. Our vendor count is still going to be the same. And now we can see this other information is the same. So take a look at that. That'll give you some experience with compiling the contracts, deploying the contracts, running them, putting in the different addresses, because we have two actors here, two roles. We have me and Max and Max's store. So we're going to have two Ethereum addresses. So we want to make sure that we load up our wallets properly, our Ethereum address wallets properly. In this past case, it was 200, and then we paid 20 to Max's wallet. And here is what we looked at. We looked at smart contract development, simulated Ethereum accounts, the views and the panels, the compiler, the deployment, the debugging, running tests, editing smart contracts, deploying and running smart contracts on Remix, the Remix console, and the debugger. Please review the assessment. And for more resources, please consult your learning materials. And for more training, please consult your learning materials. Next, we'll talk about the structure of a smart contract. Thank you.